You're listening to the Propaganda Report with Monica Perez and Brad Binkley. In today's episode, we talk about how Facebook is the equivalent of the Borg from Star Trek, the importance of self-reflection for the progress of humanity, what to expect in 2017, and much, much more. Here's Monica and Brad.
This is episode 20 of the Propaganda Report. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's 20. It's a milestone, I guess.
It is a milestone. Some of those are the WSB show, which I think is a fun change of pace.
Yeah, I get to hear from callers.
I love that. I have been told by people in radio that I have the smartest callers in radio. That it actually, people have given me like a pass for having a show that's a little too, not the easiest show to follow in the world, because obviously people are following it and raising me one because of the great calls.
You have a very intellectual audience.
I do. People who think outside the cave.
They don't just accept prepackaged conclusions from a news network. They ask questions.
They have answers.
All right.
So tomorrow, or it won't be tomorrow by the time people hear this, but Saturday, January 7th, on my show on WSB, it's going to be the predictions for 2017. And a lot of times the people who call or tweet or whatever are the ones who come up with the best stuff. I got some good stuff a few years ago about Russia as a rising threat from one of my callers. It was good. I actually replayed that call on the air.
Was it Mitt Romney?
It was not Mitt Romney. I think it might have been before Mitt Romney. Is that even possible?
Wow.
Was I even on the air before Mitt Romney? I don't know. So that's what let's talk about what our predictions are for 2017. And also, I had a lot of predictions for 2016. But who wants to hear them when the big ones, the important ones, are dead wrong? But I had some really good ones. I had many, many, and I picked out the ones that I thought were most interesting and continuing. So we can kind of mix and match that.
Yeah. What were some of your predictions that turned out to be true, and what do you think they mean for 2017?
Well, let me look at my notes. Okay, so the absolute one that I get so much email about that people are like, wow, you called that. And I actually called this several years ago, many facets of it, and they continue to unfold. A couple of years ago, when pot was first legalized in the first state, like maybe it was Colorado or it was on the ballot, I said that pot is, from what you can tell, 70% of worldwide illegal drug revenue. And given that the CIA pays for its black ops by the drug trade, as we learned in Iran-Contra, by eliminating the pot trade, they either have to replace it with something or have fewer black ops. And I thought they would do both. So they would replace it with heroin. And then that's why I predicted at the beginning of last year, especially this, that because I could see the news stories building up about the heroin epidemic, kind of morphed into the opioid epidemic. So I knew they have to replace it with something. And the way they do that is they actually advertise it by calling it an epidemic. So I remember the crack epidemic exploded in New York. And the governor was on TV all the time saying, this crack stuff, this is really crazy. I mean, people just get hooked minute one. And everyone was like, really? Wow.
So everybody goes and tries it?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not kidding. So that was a big thing. And then I also said at the same time, maybe the CIA will be wound down and the NSA, which has a blank check. So the CIA has to get its operations funded. And when it can't, it uses illegal funding. But the NSA gets a blank check. So if they take over, if intelligence moves from on the ground to cyber or whatever, you can replace a lot of the CIA stuff with NSA stuff. So that was something that was happening then, and I see that continuing on all fronts, so that when Trump is going to sit down and restructure intelligence, he's going to make it smaller, more streamlined, closer to the vest. It's going to report directly to him. People aren't really going to know what's going on. You're going to wind down the CIA, a bit and increase the NSA. And then also with the opioid stuff, they're going to continue to pull back on writing prescriptions, which is going to get people to do illegal drugs. But they're going to put a lot of money into rehab. And it may even fold into another prediction I had about increasing crime or perceived increases in crime. So that if you have drugs creating crime, then, because I observed a while ago that Nixon and Bloomberg got so much political mileage about being law and order candidates long before Trump said anything like that. I mean, years ago. And I thought this amazing decrease in crime over the past 20 years since Clinton and the contract with America had this awful, like 3 strikes, you're out, and mass incarceration, all that stuff actually seems to me to have really depressed the crime rate unbelievably. So I saw with the Ferguson effect, with the pullback of the cops, that was going to either really increase crime or at least give talking points to increase crime. And that would be a big political spur to give the government more power, more money. And that stuff is big on my kind of continuing expectations, timeline, horizon from like the last year to this year. And the other one, the last one, big one. I've got a bunch.
Well, the first two was you called the heroin epidemic and the increasing crime rate, like the Ferguson effect.
Yes, and the intelligence thing was part of that drug thing. And then the other one was a crackdown on the press. And I thought that terrorism was going to be used as a way to label to curtail free speech by saying you're a terrorist and what you say is terrorism and not free speech. But I didn't see the fake news thing. I didn't see it as like an act of war from Russia. That I did not see. But I saw a real crackdown on the press coming.
Yeah. The heroin thing is interesting. Well, I mean, it's all interesting, but like I go to Starbucks a lot, and it's like Starbucks is like a coffee shop. I mean, of course it's like a coffee shop, obviously. Starbucks is like an office for people who do like freelance work, entrepreneurs, and people who are just out of work and tell people they're entrepreneurs. And a lot of times the bathrooms in the Starbucks downtown are like, somebody will go in there and they'll be in there for like 4 hours. And they'll pass out or they'll overdose on heroin in the Starbucks bathroom. That was an epidemic in one of the Starbucks that I used to go to downtown. People were found overdosing on heroin like a couple of times a month.
That totally folds into one of my predictions for 2017 is a crackdown on bathrooms. And I'm not kidding. I had already had it on my list that the 2 last bastions of privacy in this country are lawyers, like your law firm, and the bathroom. They're the 2 places where they really don't, there isn't a systematic surveillance apparatus in place that's gotten the consent of the people. Bathrooms and lawyers. I saw 2 articles about lawyers in the Wall Street Journal and how hacking and insider trading and crime and all this dangerous stuff was happening because law firms had privacy. And I thought with the transgender bathrooms that if you allowed to mix sexes in the bathroom, it no longer is a bastion of privacy. And then today's gunman in Fort Lauderdale went into the bathroom to load his gun. So I was like, wow.
Men's or women's?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. They're all going to be wired up. So the heroin thing could also be part of surveillance in the bathroom because you can still go into a bathroom and expect to have a private conversation. You look around, you certainly can't see any cameras in there.
I mean, you go in there and find a date now because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, they could be. Starbucks will move into the bathroom the way like your party is always in your kitchen, right, whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
The other day, I went into the bathroom of a pizza place, and
Comet Ping Pong.
It was Ping Pong Pizza. They were, there was some guy in the stall screaming menacingly. I ran out of that bathroom and I thought, is this a transgender situation? But I think he was just inebriated one way or another. And they chased him out of there.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So anyway, this guy at the Fort Lauderdale airport there were a couple of things that I noticed. The thing about the bathroom, another thing that I had in my predictions for 2017, which I think this is going to play into, my actual prediction said, where's my stuff? I don't even know. My prediction said they were going to, sorry, honey, I got my wrong pages here. Here it is. I'm not organized right now. Normally, I'm highly organized.
It's the new year. Give yourself a break.
I keep writing 2016 on my checks. Okay, so it says I had written this for 2017. I wrote, what false flags will this administration have? I wrote mass shooting, ? Gun rights curtailed, watch list, no-fly list increased. Maybe start with Muslims, but spread to domestic terrorists, the mentally ill, convicts, and vets with a psychiatric history. They might even call it the Chris Kyle law.
When did you say that?
I wrote this in my notes for tomorrow's show.
Okay.
But I wrote that.
This guy's a vet, and he
had a military ID, yeah.
Yeah, he went to an FBI office recently and said that he was hearing voices telling him to join ISIS.
Yes, so that plays into the mentally ill thing, the military ID, but the fact that the FBI always has contact with these people ahead of time reminds me of when Judge Napolitano did like his last show on Fox and then he was abruptly canceled, was how the FBI is responsible for almost all terrorist attacks in this country. They're almost always radicalized by the FBI. They're all these sting operations, and that they don't actually happen without this intercession by the FBI. So when you see people like him or Omar Mateen who have had a lot of interaction, you have to wonder if they are MK Ultra kind of thing. You know, if you look up Operation MK Ultra on Wikipedia, it was a CIA mind control operation. Yeah. And the Navy Yard shooter said the same thing. He heard voices.
That has to be the most common theme throughout every event, is that they always meet with the FBI, or the FBI always interview them. Just stay away from the FBI and you won't be
That's the truth. That's the truth. The Jihad John, who decapitated people in the Middle East, supposedly with the British accent, actually interviewed to be an MI6 agent and didn't do it. He chose to be an ISIS operative instead. And you just have to wonder.
Did he get the offer for the MI6?
Well, they say he didn't. You know what I mean? Like, they say he didn't. Okay. But you might wonder if this, like the underwear bomber.
Yeah,
yes, the underwear bomber, the second one, the first one probably too, but the second underwear bomber was also an MI6 agent.
Really?
Yes. And that was that big thing where they were hacking, where the U.S. government was hacking into journalists' emails. It was after somebody blew the whistle on that and said, this was a guy who had been an FBI investigator on the Oklahoma City bombing. He saw this Underwear 2 come down and he blew the whistle on it, I think, because he didn't want to see anybody get hurt. And then they said, oh, it's okay. Nobody would have gotten hurt because we were all over it. And it was a sting operation, but I don't think so. I mean, I think it was a false flag operation. And then that guy, the whistleblower, went to jail for kiddie porn.
That's what they're going to get everybody on, really.
Yes.
They have the FBI has just an endless amount of kiddie porn stored, and they can just pin that on anybody.
Yeah, and it was even described in the Wall Street Journal as a bizarre coincidence that he happened to be, they happened to be investigating him for kiddie porn when they discovered that he was the whistleblower.
Well, what a terrible job to have at the FBI. Well, I mean, they should give that job to Podesta,
guys who like
it. Yeah, let Podesta work in the FBI kiddie porn room.
Yeah. Some people think the fact that the FBI runs actual kiddie porn websites is in itself a crime because they do replay actual kiddie porn.
It's a crime.
So can we talk about what I think some of the things that are going to come out of this Fort Lauderdale shooter and what you think? I just have a few things jotted down. He came through Canada. That's an important part of the meme. And what I believe this is going to lead to a call for international standards and international enforcement of those standards have surveillance. I mean, the surveillance in Europe when you're in the airport is unreal. It's so annoying. It's so inefficient. But I think there's going to put pressure on other countries to increase that. I heard a guy, on the scene guy, talking into his cell phone to Shep Smith. I just, by coincidence, I guess this guy got through to Shep Smith on the air today. It was actually WSB played it on the Sean Hannity show, where the guy was saying shots are ringing out. They're saying there's a second shooter in the parking garage. They're telling us to get down. There are people with gunshot wounds in the head all around me right now. And the guy was like super freaking out. And then the official story is there was only one shooter. So either that guy was fake, and the official story is that police did not fire any guns. So it's not like the second shooter was actually a cop. Now they might just change that story when they realize it doesn't make sense. But there's always multiple shooters, and then it comes down to one shooter. I actually had that as a prediction a couple of years ago and have had the occasion to replay it a couple of times because that's always the way it works.
But what you said about the caller potentially being fake too, that's also a possibility. That it wouldn't surprise me if they were doing that on purpose just to cause the confusion. Because when you see a story like that, you know that you can call in and claim to be in the midst of it and you're going to get airtime.
Yeah, and you weren't really hearing anything. I don't remember hearing anything in the background from this guy that would make it feel authentic. I don't know. It sounded authentic until he started to panic in a real live situation where there were more gunshots being fired. Like, that just didn't make sense because they'd already told him the area was clear, secured. And he's like, it took forever for the cops to get here, which is impossible to believe at an airport.
It's that intentional confusion, intentional bewilderment that we talk about a lot. Just keeping people so confused and bewildered by all the information that comes from them, from the media, that we can't tell which way is up.
Yes. And so I used to think it was a flaw or something they just knew we wouldn't get past, all this mumbo jumbo, all the confusion. But now I actually believe that it just is targeting a segment of the population, a huge segment, who will get mired in the conflicting details. It's fascinating. It's what I labeled as a glossary entry on my website, truth porn. And then I read an article in Global Research that I sent to you earlier today where the guy discusses journalism porn, where it's just not even journalism. It's just these news stories that keep you kind of titillated and then don't pay off. I don't know. I'm not a fan of porn. That sounds like a strip club.
There's something called information gap theory.
We
always want to know more information. And with the internet giving us access to unlimited information, whether it's bogus or real, we can continue to try and satisfy this. It's impossible to satisfy information gap because until we know what the entire universe is, we're always going to have a gap in our information. So we can keep ourselves occupied and continuing to satisfy that need. They're trying to anyway.
And
it's a way to control us. Well, I'm saying they know that we have a desire to get information, to find the answer, to learn the truth about the world around us. And just by overwhelming us with information and always keeping us a little bit unsure of what's going on, they can just keep us locked into the grid, searching for information, trying to find the answer without really looking to see what's going on in the reality around us.
That's interesting. That may fold into something that you emailed me earlier today about how people are totally controlled or on the way to being controlled by social media. And my problem with it is how do you keep them engaged? Because eventually it's just boring. And I thought maybe it's only going to be targeted to young people who have nothing else to do. But maybe maybe they're good at the tease.
Well, that's the challenge of getting people who didn't grow up with, the kind of technology that we have right now. Kids, there's so many different games and things that you can do on devices that they can keep them engaged endlessly. They'll never look away. It's getting older generations engaged, and that's what or generations who aren't used to the internet, getting them engaged, and that's what they're trying to do in these parts of the world that are not yet connected to the internet. They're trying to connect it to, if we can get you guys connected to the internet one way or another, it's going to enable us to get you water easier because of this technology. What they're using these needs that people can relate to get them locked into the grid, the Borg, and then keeping them endlessly connected. The email that she's referring to, I said in it that basically the goal was to get everybody in the world connected to the internet, because they've proven through the internet that they can cause big groups of people to repeat the same ridiculous story without asking any questions, without even questioning it, to a whole bunch, just disseminate it to everybody. So create an echo chamber, a thoughtless echo chamber of mass groups of people, and by getting the entire world connected to it, they essentially create the Borg. Because they can reach everybody.
What's the Borg?
The Borg is from Star Wars, or not Star Wars, Star Trek.
Star Trek. Yeah, the Next Generation.
Yeah, the Next Generation, and the one with Janeway. Also, the Borg's in that one.
Deep Space Nine.
Voyager.
Oh.
Yeah. And the Borg is basically everybody has the same thoughts, everybody has the same mind, everybody is one. There is no individuality, and they just control mass amounts of people through
and they assimilate
one
them.
voice.
Like when they conquer you, they assimilate you into the Borg, and you become a cyborg, like half your old self and half the new thing.
And that's what we're becoming.
Your observation about that is interesting. Oh, well, they call that the singularity. Like that's people are really worried about that. But before we move on, that what you're talking about solves a problem for me, because I was thinking that the mainstream media has an absolute iron grip on the opinions of people. I would say anybody older than me is, I mean, you can't.
Anybody over 29?
Yes, under 20. I know I'm 40 something, and I always will be. So don't ever ask me that again. So anybody older than I am is going to be I try to figure out what's really going on, and I really try to puzzle about what's really going on. I would say the majority of people older than I am don't even think there's something to, you actually have to stop at square one and be like, the mainstream media is not telling you the truth. Like there's no repercussions. Like they think there are repercussions. When Shep Smith says something that's not true, they think that Putin is going to sue him and win and get a retraction on air in prime time, just like, and that's just not happening. So to try to get them to realize that stuff is fake is the problem, just to start out with. So you're never convincing them that the Republican Democrat thing is a sham. None of that. However, I was like, how are they really going to replace that? And I guess I'm saying everybody younger than you, like 13 and below, that's not going to be a problem because they're totally assimilated. The tweeners, they're totally assimilated into the Borg. And then I guess there's this dead zone between us where, maybe it includes us, where it can kind of go either way. But I would say most of the people I run into, the moms in the whatever, soccer, the bleachers, are not, I would say maybe 10% or 20% when I start talking, they're just not like, you're crazy.
And that's what they talk about in those articles about how to get everybody engaged in the entire world connected to the internet, is how to engage the different groups of people who are not currently engaged, who do not believe they need it, who don't see a reason for it.
Can't they just write off the olds, though? You're saying You're saying they have to bring the olds on.
They got to get everybody on. Can't they just let
the raisins die?
I guess they can, but ideally they want everybody locked in moving forward, because any segment of the population that's not locked in is not subject to the biggest propaganda machine that's ever existed, the internet. So they're not affected by it. So they got to be locked into it to be affected by it.
This so folds into that when I was telling you I met this chick whose husband, she was seeing a homeless guy who had a phone.
She was dating a homeless guy?
Yeah, it was a strange encounter, but
I mean, you got to have a certain level of confidence to be homeless and still be picking up chicks.
oh, and he wasn't nice to her either. It was like this. I was like, honey, you really have to avoid that.
I'm not
guy.
getting a house for you.
No, it's not good. But the Obama phone, the fact that they gave everybody like HD TVs, the right complained about it like it was some welfare program, but of course it wasn't. I wonder if even cash for clunkers was just a way to get rid of dumb cars.
Yeah, they're trying. Yeah. Facebook has something called Facebook Zero, where they're trying to they have a plan to connect the entire world to they have an active plan where they're trying to assimilate the entire world into the Facebook Borg. And they got an entire not a continent, but I can't remember what country it was, but they got an entire country that wasn't connected in under 18 months. I'd have to go back and look at the story, but it's called Facebook Zero.
Speaking of entire populations, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I just have to get this off my chest. I've seen this number repeatedly, that 200 million people registered to vote. 200 million people. Now I got to see if I have my notes, which are just scribbled on the bottom. Oh, look at that, right there on top. Scribbled on the bottom of the newspaper. I do my best thinking on the margins of the newspaper, which just infuriates my husband. So you really cannot read a newspaper after I'm finished with it. Absolutely not. So, but I just did some math on the bottom of the newspaper, and it's the total population of the U.S. is around 320 million. There's 74 million kids and 16 million adults who are not citizens, I guess. Anyway, this is a big mess here, but there are apparently, according to my calculations, 230 million voters, eligible voters, and 200 million registered. So,
say that number again. 230
million. All right, there are 320 million people, and 90 million are not eligible to vote because they're too young or they're not citizens. That gets you to 230 million. And then 200 million were registered to vote, which gets you so that's the official numbers is 87%. But I think that illegals number is too low. I think it's closer to 22 million people who are non-citizens. So I think that means there are even fewer eligible voters, and that the voter registration rate was 93%, which is close to the percentage for drivers. Like almost as many people register to vote as drive a car, even though the actual votes are only about 130 million. So what I think is going on is, I think that is some evidence of election fraud. And you could look at it from either way. Trump says that all these people, these illegals are voting. And I would say if you look at those numbers, you have to think that illegal people were voting, or at least registered to vote, just because the voter registration number is just too high as a percentage of eligible voters. Or they just made people up for Trump. Like, I don't know. Either way you want to go. But there's just something super screwy about, in my opinion, the idea that 200 million people registered to vote.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, I'm sure there's election fraud. There's no
for
telling.
everyone to be plugged in is amazing to me. And I know
it does seem like a high number, doesn't it?
It doesn't seem right. But also, like, with that, everybody has a cell phone and everybody is connected. That's a big push. So maybe a big push can get people. Yeah,
look into that Facebook Zero thing, anybody who's listening, and Facebook's plans for connecting the entire world to the internet. It's very evil, take over the world type stuff, in my opinion. I'll put some of the links in the description or whatever.
And they go into other countries and they introduce this too. And I was in an Uber. The driver was Ethiopian, and he said what happens with aid, because I asked him immediately, like, so I don't think I've ever been in an Uber where I haven't immediately started to pick the guy's brain about whatever country he's from or what he thinks of the government or his personal experience. I love Uber for that reason. It's like a cross section of humanity you can really have. And they have to be nice to you, because if you're not perfect, you don't get a perfect score. So I love it. So this guy was saying how for the aid to Ethiopia,
they have to talk to you.
They have to, and they have to be polite, even if I totally offend them. They have to. So he was saying that 70%, I don't know where he got this number. I meant to press him for his source. But he said 70% of the fee of the foreign aid is administrative costs. So if you give $100 million to Ethiopia, $70 million is just getting Americans, paying for Americans to go over there and do their work, quote. And he said, and then they take the rest and they give it to people who are buying into what they're selling. So they literally try to just shape who's prosperous, who's influential, what their ideology is.
Who's giving the money to them?
So it's foreign aid, U.S. foreign aid to other countries. Because this is the thing. We give foreign aid. And as a libertarian, of course, I object to that.
It's a way to control.
It's even worse, than just giving them money. It's a way, because Ethiopians I've talked to always say, because when I was growing up, when I was a little kid, Ethiopia was in a terrible famine. That was like, you'd see ads for it all the time. Ethiopia, Ethiopia. And I always ask Ethiopians, oh my gosh, like you had that terrible famine. And they always say like, no, not really. I was totally exaggerated. And I wondered why. Why was it exaggerated? And then I realized it's to justify foreign aid. And the foreign aid isn't to feed them, because the problem isn't as bad as we're told. It's to influence their governments. And then I realized, after talking to enough of these people, or I think that that's what all foreign aid is for. And sometimes it even goes to like the warlords, like they might have a normal society. There's a book, Africa Unchained. I spent a lot of money on it. I got to read that. And the idea is that foreign aid keeps entrenched or connected interests on top, and the little guy can never compete. Then all of a sudden regulations come down. They have this big bureaucratic state, and it really ruins the opportunities for kind of grassroots entrepreneurship. Is that too much of a tangent? What were we talking about?
I think we started off by going through the predictions that you made that were correct.
Yeah.
And then we talked a little bit about the CNN story, the Fort Lauderdale shooting.
Yes, I would say just what my biggest failures were last year were obviously I thought it was going to be Jeb and Hillary in the end, which it definitely was not. I also thought that the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership would get passed for sure. So I kind of smell a rat with what's going to be going on. I mean, my view of the world had been that the Trilateral Commission, which goes the three lats, the trilateral is North America and South America, Europe and Asia, like centered on Japan, and that the CFR, Council of Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, like the big conspiracy guys, they just regionalized the economies, and eventually we're going to stitch everything up. And the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership and the Transatlantic Trade Partnerships were big parts of that, almost the final step. The final step is plugging Russia and China in. So that's how I saw the world. And it just doesn't, it looks like that stuff's on the back burner. However, when you hear Trump say we're going to renegotiate NAFTA, and then the guy from Canada and the guy from Mexico are like, yeah, let's do it. I'm thinking, huh? And then you remember he said, I'm going to build a wall and I'm going to put a big, beautiful door in it. I'm like, oh, yeah, like Heidi. She just wants to leave the door open. So I feel like maybe we're having a different approach to this where people don't suspect, but we're still going to have that kind of thing. I don't know. Or on the other hand,
that's what they always, that's what they always do. What you just said about the humanitarian aid is it's all propaganda always diverts attention to reasons that aren't the reasons. So like the humanitarian thing, it's always get us focused on how the Ethiopians are struggling so that we don't see that they're actually giving all this money to warlords. And when it comes to world government, there's the First World War, they were trying to get the League of Nations or whatever, but it didn't go all the way like they wanted it to. So they got to shift and focus attention elsewhere and then renegotiate things. So they're constantly shifting.
Well, then they had
our
another
attention.
war, and they got
Right.
the UN, and they're supposed to have a third one to get the true world authority, as the Vatican calls it. But maybe it's what you said, which is this nationalism. I don't think we fully appreciate. It's a European concept, this kind of ethnic identity nationalism, that the right is characterized by insularism rather than by small government, because it's not
By
about
what? What was that word?
Oh, I just made that up. Insularism, insular, like insular, insulate.
Okay, insulate. All right.
Yeah, that could be wrong. Isn't insular INSULAR? I'm a terrible speller.
Like, I've never heard that word before in my life, so I won't be able to confirm or deny.
Insular. The definition of insular of living or located on an island. Circumscribed and detached in outlook and experience, narrow or provincial. Yes. So I added the ism. But
Okay.
insular. Should I tell people that I spend my entire life trying to figure out the exact right word for
Yes, and
what
that's
I
a
want to
perfect
convey?
time to bring this up. Yes.
Yes.
See,
I
Monica
really have.
there's from time to time, Monica will use some language, some words that I've never heard of before, but she has very thoughtfully chose these words to fit specific situations. And once I realized that, it made me interested in knowing what the words meant. So we're going to try to start like pointing out some of Monica's precise language that she uses to describe things, if anything, to help me better learn new big words.
Well, if it weren't, I never use big words to use big words. Like, that's actually annoying and unclear. But if you can really give somebody a feeling of what you mean exactly, like take your complex, nuanced, and even emotional understanding of it and take it out of your brain and put it right in their brain, like it's like the connotation versus denotation when they teach you how to define a word. One is like the definition, and the other is like what the impression it makes on you. And that's why I love the exact right word. But then usually I'll follow it up by like a longer version of what I'm talking about so people don't get lost, because I had to learn that for the on-air radio WSB. You can't, it's just people are driving around in traffic. They're jumping out of the car. You can't like throw these words. They can't pick up a dictionary. They can't pause it. So you have to kind of give them that, but it gives you I really think it's worthwhile and it's fun. So
I think that's awesome. Like the method behind your word selection, like I think that for me, that's important to know, because it makes it interesting for me to find out why you choose certain words. Then.
Right. And I do try not to sound like a blowhard. I'm not doing it to sound smart at all, but I do have on my website, and maybe, I don't know if we put it on Propaganda Report, thepropreport.com, if you will, or propagandareportdaily.com. I have a glossary on my own blog from my show, MonicaPerezShow.com, where I put like terms of art, as they're called. Like I invent some, like truth porn was one I invented. I just coined a term, upsource, which I think is going to be a theme going forward, upsource. So subsidiarity is this concept. It's a Catholic concept, but it's also a small government libertarian concept where the smallest level is where you should deal with the problems. Your person, your family, your community. Then if you have to go up to the state level or the federal level. And I've noticed that the Republicans are doing the opposite, like with the Defense of Marriage Act, with this wanting to make bathroom laws at the state level that bind all the municipalities. Same thing with bans of plastic bags, like these ways
with
of getting... There were bans on plastic bag bans. So Republican states were banning municipalities from enacting plastic bag bans. So they were telling them what they could or couldn't do. It's crazy. So it's like GMO labeling is being banned, and Republicans lead the charge on banning the labeling instead of just promoting freedom. Do what you want. Label, don't label. So I coined the word upsource, that even like medical care, everything gets upsourced to a higher level, state level or the federal level. So anyway, I have a glossary with words like that are pretty, people like it. It's fun. Anyway, so if you hear a word like that, Binkley, you'll have to
I will point
get
it
a little
out,
blowhorn so I can slow down. But I will
find a blowhorn.
You had a great point about this nationalism thing, where that for me, what I was saying was that nationalism was not a part of right thinking, of the political spectrum on the right here in America, because conservatism is like a fluid term. This is something I also discovered over time, that conservatism in Europe is different from conservatism in America, because conservatism just means you don't want the past to change. So in this country, the American experiment, the original idea was liberty. So for us, conservatives are what Europe calls liberals, because in Europe, the conservatives were like monarchists and the liberals were the ones who wanted to liberate.
Yeah.
So for us, this idea of conservatism of a right, a political right, did not include nationalism and stuff. So in Europe, the right, the nationalistic right, was a socialist right. The National Socialists, that's what the Nazis were. They were socialists. So they don't have this sense of small government on the right, but they do have the scariness of nationalism being socialism, which they like, but with this element of xenophobia and killing people, which doesn't terrify us here because we weren't that close to it. It terrifies them there, and it's been built into their culture to reject that, to fear it, to think it's a thing of the past, and want to eradicate
Europe?
it. Yes. So if they have a nationalist resurgence, like Brexit, and France and Germany are having elections this year, that if they move to the right, their right, it will terrify most people who were raised in the schools there. And that's what you were saying. They will then call out for globalism, for world government, for no national borders, because the nationalism creates a crisis they're going to react to.
Yeah, I actually have on my list of things that I think we're going to see in 2017 that world government, one world government globalism is going to become like a hot, trendy thing for progressives in our country. And I think a lot of it's going to stem from because of what's going on with Brexit. I think
so
Brexit
like California.
Yeah, California. I mean, people I know have already started talking about it who they never brought up the idea of one world government. They associated it with conspiracy theories in the past, but what Brexit did was it put the concept of global government into the world consciousness. It made it more prominent in the conversation, and it's becoming more and more of a trendy, progressive thing to want to happen. And
those people will identify with this very UN top-down concept of world citizen. So if you're terrified of your own government, you are going to want a supranational government. So if you could not be an American citizen under Trump because you're terrified of him, then you could step out and be this world citizen, because what can you do? The left was using the federal government to push down on the states, like Obamacare and stuff, gay marriage, whatever. But they got trumped by Trump. So
Trump
now,
card.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird. It's just like Shepard Smith. It's just so weird that Shepard is the name of the guy who shepherds us, shepherds the sheep.
Yeah.
And Trump is the Trump card. And don't even get me started on Anthony Weiner. I can't. So it just cries out for puns. But if these guys they want to Trump, they want to get above that so that they can feel safe again. So I can see that it's being a gateway. And then it's just the question I'm beginning to realize, the question is, now, I am beginning to realize how important where the heart and soul, where the minds, where the feeling of the people are, like democracy is this great form of tyranny, this great way of getting people to completely accept anything that happens because they think that the majority of the people want it, and we've learned to accept that.
Yeah.
But how much? So when I looked, I always thought the media was all powerful, just crams it down, and we just accept it, especially after Obamacare, which clearly people did not want, but we accepted it. I mean, we're beating it now, I guess, but we'll see. So I realize now that it matters like what level they've shepherded our feelings. You know, how are we ready to truly abandon the American founding principles or what? I mean, that's how I wonder how this is going to unfold, because it looked to me like socialism was absolutely winning in the world. So if the powers that be want to usher in world government.
I think, I mean, if anything we learned in this previous election cycle, it's that a large portion of the population can get really excited about a socialist communist message delivered from a obvious communist if you look into it to Bernie Sanders' history.
I mean, Obama could be. I mean, Obama was raised by communists. His grandparents were communists.
Him too. I just mean just the excitement behind Bernie Sanders, and he was delivering a blatant communist message. And he is a communist if you look into his history. So like a communist delivering a communist message rallied a large portion of the country. They got excited about communism. They don't realize it, but they did.
Country's the last, I would think this is the last bastion of liberty. So they don't associate it with a lack of liberty. They don't understand that. I predicted when Obamacare got passed that they then would be able to tell you what you can eat. And then I heard Bloomberg, when he was pushing his sugary drink ban, say, now that we pay for your health care, what you put into your body is our business. Same thing about pot. If you're paying for people's health care or alcohol or wearing a motorcycle helmet, you know, all these things, they simply must control you if they're going to pay for you. So they don't think of it as a move away from liberty, as illiberal, but they do.
They're not focused on that part of the issue. Yeah, their point of focus in the issue is about the equality, is about whatever, all the socialist messages. They want a higher
standard of living. They want a higher standard of living than they can access right now at the work level and the education level that they have or are willing to put in. That's the bottom line.
That's the prominent focus. Yeah. It's so that to them the liberty thing's in the back.
They're incompetent because they're going to. I'm not even criticizing them, but they have. It's an extreme moral hazard to have these indiscriminate school loans that the government, a private enterprise, Citibank or whatever, would never give school loans to a dance major. I sat next to a dance major on the plane the other day, and he was like not even 30 years old. She's like, I am a classic millennial. I have tons of debt and absolutely nothing marketable. I can't get a job as a dance major.
He was a dance major?
Yes.
What kind? I didn't know you could major in dance.
Yeah, well, you can.
What kind of dance?
You spend a lot of money. I don't know. I didn't dig into it, but I knew that it wasn't. It was impractical. I'm not just making this up. I'm saying that they do impractical things. If a parent or the government facilitates these horrible decisions, then you come out the other end with a lot of debt, no marketable skills, and it feels unfair to you because you've worked hard, you've done what you were told, and now you can't make ends meet. So what should happen? You should have those school loans forgiven, or you should have a minimum wage job. You know, that's how they're thinking of it. And that's what they want. They really just want what they think is their fair share.
Right. I disagree that they don't have marketable skills that they can use. The problem is they're not taught how to turn those skills into any sort of income. Like that guy, maybe he is doing it, but he should just teach dance to people who want to learn how to dance until he can get to where he wants to go. And he might be able to blow that up into something.
He was. Yeah, he was teaching dance.
It's the inability to connect the skills that they learn to solving a real world problem that is the problem. Any skill can be valuable as long as you can connect it to solving a real world problem.
Yes, I think that kind of assessment, if done before you commit to $100,000 you don't have, is good.
Yeah.
And that they don't do it because their parents and the government and the bank and the school tell them to search their souls and see what would be fun. And what you really actually need to do is do an NPV, a net present value. And maybe you can't figure out every possible outcome. Hey, just roll the dice, be a dance major. I'm sure it'll work out. Some people don't actually want to do it that way and don't realize that's what they're doing. And I think those are the people who feel like they've been misled, and then they have this sense of injustice that I say a free market, a free society, liberty immediately connects decisions with consequences to the point where you see them all around you and you make better choices. And you don't have these moral hazards where people will lend you money in advance to do what, for me, being an English major, whatever, is what I would do in retirement. And that to me is an absolute leisure activity.
Yeah. This guy needs to target people. He needs to target men who want to impress women is what he needs to do. Rich men who want to impress women and who are shy about getting on the dance floor, yet they have to go to a bunch of events where they have to dance a lot. So he needs to target very wealthy people who would love to learn how to dazzle ladies on the dance floor. And he could probably make a ton of money.
Well, I told him about this show, so maybe he's listening. And he can, we'll do a little back and forth in the comments section.
A dude who can dance is impressive, especially if he's manly, to women anyway. Unless it's like hip hop dancing or anything.
I don't know. I like ideas. I wasn't asking him about his personal stuff.
I know. I was just thinking that's where my mind goes when I start thinking about this stuff.
Yes, I agree that you definitely have tapped into something when you tell people to not allow themselves to be talked out of, thinking outside the box with their own personal, life direction. Yeah. I agree with that. That's a fundamentally libertarian solution to a lot of the problems that I find oppressive in society.
It's Benjamin Franklin.
It folds. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Do what? It's just Benjamin Franklin's entire life. Like he created the flexible catheter as we know it today. He invented that. I mean, there's other people who've shaped it and stuff, but his brother was using, and this is a painful thing to imagine, but his brother had a metal catheter, a clunky metal catheter that they used back then. And he's not a doctor, but he just saw that his brother was in pain, and he looked at it, and he said to himself, there's got to be a better way. And he designed something.
What do you make it out of?
I think it was rubber. I believe it was rubber or plastic. Rubber. I think, yeah. And that's how, like, if you look at his life and a lot of his, he invented so many things across a bunch of different disciplines. He was very much a generalist, and he invented stuff that practically solved problems that he or people around him faced.
Don't you feel like, and this is probably defeatist, but don't you feel like most of those simple things, that there's many fewer of those kind of like daily life things that
no, absolutely. I think we are far worse off than we were back then because we're so blinded by all our devices and technology that we don't know what the hell the real world is.
Oh, well, that's the truth. We can't do anything. And also, I should probably set my mind to how to reduce this massive stress, like this amount of stress of like raising kids and keeping your house clean. And like, that's mostly what I do is just try to keep the house clean and raise my kids well without just plugging them into the matrix the entire time and everything you need to do.
And that's what parents do. Like by habit, they do that, and like, cause I've seen it done and I've done it probably with my nieces and nephews. It's like babies are crying. It's loud. And it's like, okay, just go watch this movie just to get them off your hand.
Yeah. And my son, my son has Down syndrome, and I really need to keep him. He can't be trusted to just like sit there and do something else. Like I can make my other kids go read or sit in their rooms or whatever. I have to make absolutely certain he's not going to go anywhere. And the one way to do that is like let him choose a show on his laptop and watch it. But just trying to do this, which I love to like read and talk to you. And I mean, to shoehorn this into my life is very difficult and stressful. And I feel like, and my husband can't do it at all. He's like work, kids, that's it. Yeah. So I feel like it's almost on purpose. I actually think it's definitely on purpose that as soon as you could possibly bank some cash and go down a rung to ease up on your life, that you're still indebted on your house. Maybe you still have school loans, and your tax rate goes up. So they take most of the extra. And then you've got, you just never have the time, it seems like, to pull a Ron Paul, and just say, I'm going to make a difference. You have to be a professional politician, and then you really have to care about raising the money from whomever, lobbyists or constituents, or, just to stay informed is almost impossible in such a busy, stressful world. And here we are we should have more free time than ever before because we have all these time-saving devices, and yet we probably have less.
Yeah. Right. We just spend more time switching to other devices.
Yeah. Or our standards. Maybe our standards just go up.
Well, you just touched on something a moment ago. In order to do a lot of the things that people would want to do, like we were talking about, like Benjamin Franklin type stuff, Ron Paul type stuff, one thing that is absolutely required is a lot of critical self-reflection, like quiet reflection and critical thought, like long periods of it. And we have none of that.
Like what I used to do when I was a kid in the back of the car. My father used to drive us from New York to Denver to see his parents every year. And there was 9 kids. Some of us were in the backseat of a pickup truck. You'd always be in the back of the Vista Cruiser, whatever it was, looking out the window. That was it. Yeah. And I got a lot of great thinking. Yeah.
Like right when you lay in bed, the great thoughts come. You get in the shower, the great thoughts come. That's because we're not constantly our attention's not being pulled 18 different directions to a bunch of different devices.
But when you get into bed, you have the phone with you. You're watching TV.
You got the phone right next to you, yeah.
Yep.
Laborious self-reflection. That's the key to humanity.
You could be right. And we're really being dumbed down to 140 characters. And I'm so proud that I'm good at it. I can distill any thought into 140 characters. It's really?
That's good.
And you know me. Yes, but how many people are really understanding that, the nuances that I'm trying to pack into those words that mean so much? And
we're
people just
languaging.
You send me back the little emoji with the little circle for a mouth. What?
No, we're removing language from the human condition. We're just going to be back to symbols, just electronic symbols and movements.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Oh, that's so sad. But let's not be sad. Surely there's the nobility of man, the intellectual, the difference between us and the animals, even though they're trying to stamp it out and turn us into the cyborg, the Borg. Maybe it's not possible. Is that?
Yeah, no, I think humanity has a fair shot. It's just the challenge. That's the challenges we face right there.
Those animals at the top who think we're animals, they have no respect for us. They think there are 2 species and that they're the humans. I don't think so. But I didn't want to let the opportunity pass that what you're touching on about people being able to create their own reality, and what I was kind of saying about how that is the essence of liberty, really, truly. Like, what was it in the Heinlein book? What was it where the guy said, I'm free because they can't control my thoughts? Of course. Yeah. Google Project MK Ultra. But Harry Brown wrote How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, which is surprisingly expensive in the used book market. It's just a mass market paperback, but it's so great like that. It just really tells you how to liberate yourself even in an unfree world. And I think that's really the critical, that's the only way.
What was his name again?
Harry Brown, the great Harry Brown. My husband remembers, I don't even remember this. Maybe I do, but he brought it up recently, that when we first started going out, I guess I voted for Harry Brown. I guess he was running for president. And I said I was voting for, I thought I was too young for having voted for Harry Brown. I guess I wasn't. And he said, my husband said, who? And I said, Harry Brown, the libertarian. And he said, what's a libertarian? How far we have come. How far we have come.
Is your husband a Republican or a Democrat?
No, he has one political philosophy, and that is, I just don't want them keeping more of my money than I do. Like that's it. He just works 60 or 80 hours sometimes a week. He works like a dog. He just doesn't doesn't care that much. He wants to be able to do what he wants.
Not very ideological.
No, and he's not greedy or anything. He just wants to be able to save some money, cares about the kids, and this kind of stuff. I don't know.
That's good. I mean, ideology is used to divide and conquer, so that's good.
He's not in the rabbit hole with me. Like every once in a while, I'll say, yeah, like look at that picture. It's impossible. And he'll say, I don't know enough about physics. I'm like, yes,
I love
look at
pulling
the
people
picture.
into the rabbit hole.
So every once in a while, he'll just look at me and be like, oh my gosh, you're so right. That definitely didn't happen. That could not have happened that way. But he doesn't care.
Why don't you go investigate it a little bit more, see what you find out.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like Will Ferrell and when he learns that new trick in yoga. That's truth porn to me. Do you know what I'm talking about? So look it up.
Saturday Night Live?
Yes, Will Ferrell's yoga trick. He learned something that I cannot discuss on the air.
Right,
and you never see him again. So that's what happens when you go down the rabbit hole. That's why I invented truth porn as a word, because I think that's why they leave the smoking guns out there, where they leave those pictures out there where you're like, that is not possible. You know, that did not happen. Like I can see the director, but I
mean, they really are in no
freak out on it.
Yeah, they're in no danger of people, finding all this stuff and then revolting. At least for the most part, because people who look at, say, Fox News only versus people who look at, say, CNN only are looking at two completely different versions of reality that they both feel 100% confident about. So those,
but they're really
they come
the flip side of the same false reality.
Right. Yeah, and so the people who are shouting conspiracy, they're not veering from their beliefs. They're sticking strong to the news. People get media to confirm the beliefs they already have. They don't go get media to challenge their own beliefs and to be wrong about things. That's why people can put fake news stories out and somebody burns down a church, writes vote Trump. Yeah. And they never find out that it was a fake story because they're not going to go seek
because they want it. Is that the confirmation bias fallacy?
That's the confirmation bias. Yeah, it feels good for them to be right.
The Plato thing, which we've talked about before, where if you go and tell the people what is really going on, they will kill you.
Right.
And I'll tell you, Socrates and Jesus both had that experience. Democracy killed them. Because they told the truth. Where they gave people a revelation of the true nature of humanity.
All right, so where were we?
Did I silence you there?
No.
What'd I say? Where'd I go wrong?
No, I was just looking down at my paper trying to find my place. And, whenever I hear true nature of a humanity, I like to reflect for a moment.
There, the laborious self-reflection that creates the human mind.
I have some predictions for 2017.
Yeah, go
if that's where we're headed.
Yeah, why don't you go first?
Okay, one of them, and I think I might have mentioned some of this in that email I sent you, but I believe that we are going to see in 2017 a live-streamed terror event or a live-streamed mass shooting. Because live stream has kind of taken off towards the end of the year, as we saw a couple of days ago with the Facebook thing where the four black teenagers beat up the white kid for 30 minutes, and like we saw during the riots in Milwaukee, there was instantly an angry mob was mobilized via social media through live stream within hours, and I believe this live stream is a very powerful thing for the elites, and we're going to start seeing terror events in real time. From citizen journalists or
Yeah, you might be right because, or I should say, I agree. That's plausible to me, likely. And today, when I was anyway listening to Shep Smith talk to the guy at the airport on the phone in real time when like part 2 of the event began to unfold. I mean, that's just one step away from what you're talking about.
Right, exactly. And another thing that this live stream is leading into is, you know how Facebook is like, I think the guy called it the self-generating intelligence dossier, because people just give the information to them for free, where if they were asked for all their personal information, they go, no way, I want my privacy. I believe that Livestream is going to be doing the same thing when it comes to video surveillance. People are live streaming a large portion of their day because they think they have to get their media out there directly, otherwise it'll get deleted. So they're leaving the camera on a lot more than they naturally would, but they're not even thinking about being watched. They're thinking about delivering information.
The Amazon Echo and Alexa thing, and the fact that TVs are all going to have cameras in them. These are all things we're inviting. Like, somebody literally got us an Echo, and I won't let them take it out of the box. Like, I'm like, hey, man, I think it's on already.
You need to kill that thing right now.
Totally. I want to smash it with a sledgehammer.
Put it in a vat of acid and get it the hell away from your house.
That's how I feel about it.
Okay,
I'm just going to put it in my freezer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your fridge is going to start talking to you.
Doesn't your
freezer? I have no idea.
Isn't that like the only way to keep your phone from
telling on you? Do you have a smart freezer?
Because this Echo thing, no, it's just made of, I don't know.
Wait a minute. Your phone, it can't get through the freezer? Is that what you're saying?
If your phone is off and the government wanted to use it as a listening device, it could. But I think if you put it in the freezer, it couldn't hear through that.
They'll just be like, "What is that? Is that ice? Is she making ice all day long?"
But wasn't there this recent thing where the Amazon Echo was a witness to a murder? Yeah.
They were trying to get him to show the information.
Yeah. So I'm just saying a story like that is setting you up for those things being, you want to surveil it, because if you're getting murdered, the Amazon Echo can order you a cop.
People are going to come over to my house now, open the freezer, and all of my technology is going to fall out.
I don't do it, but you can look and see like the little mesh pouches that are supposed to protect your phone from, I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know.
Have you not actually ever, you're not a tinfoil hat guy, I guess.
No, I am a tinfoil hat guy.
You never investigated that stuff?
I'm thinking about getting a giant freezer just to have conversations in that I don't want the government to listen to.
Like Hillary with her tent, when she checked her email on her phone, she put a tent over her so nobody could see it, because that's how Russia works.
Yeah, bring a heavy jacket. We're going to be having a long conversation in the freezer tonight.
We're going to go sit in a tent. So funny. I just think that's funny.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, she was like on the phone, and she's like, we would put a coat over our heads so that nobody could see what we were typing. Like, on a phone, like a smartphone. Anyway, whatever. And let's not forget that she was recorded years ago saying she doesn't use email because of all the time she's been investigated. And Donald Trump doesn't use email either. And I actually know 2 billionaires, at least 1 degree removed, who don't use email.
Yeah.
So the whole story was kind of hard to buy.
I was going to say that I like when people put like a piece of tape over their computer monitor on their laptop or something, as though that's gonna stop it, because you can still hear everything. And it's just like, it's like a flimsy. It's like if the government surveillance they're so advanced where they can just tap into your computer and watch you from your laptop, that the one thing they didn't think about was duct tape or electrical tape. We didn't think of that. Now I'm sure he does. Zuckerberg.
I mean, that was a story. That was actually an article. Like, Zuckerberg busted with a piece of tape over his monitor's eye. It's like, okay, because they want you to believe that works. I think it would work. I mean, it would close that particular outlet.
You know, you get this advanced technology. I think they're saying, I don't think they're going to look past tape. I think they're going to be able to see through it. I mean, they have cameras that can see through walls.
I just got, this is a breaking news flash. I just got an email from somebody in the media, which I'm sure this information.
Anderson Cooper?
It's an anonymous source in the Atlanta
You have an
media.
anonymous source?
Well, this person is anonymous right now because I'm not telling you. But I'm sure this is information that's in the news, obviously. This is not an inside. But she's saying it's the same as what you said. This guy, the shooter in Fort Lauderdale, got out of the Army 4 months ago and received mental health treatment after recently walking into an FBI office in Anchorage saying the government was forcing him to watch ISIS videos.
Oh, really?
Yes. And isn't that what you sent me, that link about the Al-Qaeda recruitment videos that were being made for the U.S. government by a British company?
Yeah. It's interesting. The propaganda for ISIS on social media is pretty, I mean, it's pretty elaborate, and a lot of it deals with those videos, like the ones that the U.S. made and the ones that ISIS made, and probably the ones that he's talking about.
Yeah, they have a very sophisticated operation. Anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. It's okay. All right, another thing. All right, now this might be kind of a bold prediction, but I believe that a public figure, I don't know which one, Podesta could be someone to look out for, but I think one of these public figures is going to be exposed as a pedophile in 2017. But once it happens, I believe the process of normalizing pedophilia will then be greatly enhanced.
Yeah, so this will be the last, like when Bill Clinton was lambasted for having smoked pot but didn't inhale. That opened the way for George W. Bush, who was like busted for coke and had a horrible drinking problem.
Right.
It's like whatever. And Obama, I thought there were pictures of him smoking pot. Am I wrong about that? Anyway, so keep going. I want to know more.
Okay. I believe that while this is somewhat, risque, I think that it is a major propaganda tool. These lifelike sex robots that they've been working so hard on, I believe these are going to be rolled out to a broader mainstream audience in 2017. People are going to start replacing boyfriends and girlfriends with robots. I think that's going to happen sometime. It's not going to be like everywhere, but there are going to be people that start doing it.
This year?
Yeah, I think they're going to roll those out. Yeah, I believe that's going to happen. There's already people who are getting some of these robots. I think we're going to see more and more of it.
I've seen, after you sent me an article about that, I was watching videos of actual androids that are out there now, which are definitely way behind the actual technology. So they look kind of stilted, but they don't have to. Like, I think there might be...
there's a few key functions that they have to focus on for these, and I believe...
Full functionality is...
Yeah.
Were you a fan of Data?
Oh, yeah. I love Data from Star Trek.
Yeah, he was fully functional.
Yeah. Right. And they've been seeding more and more of those type of characters in a lot of these sci-fi shows. I think we're being culturally conditioned to not be able to differentiate between a robot and a person. Now we may not be there yet based on the technology that we know, but I bet there's a lot more advanced technology where we could be complete. There's going to be androids walking around in the public before the public is aware of it. That's what I believe.
That's interesting. Speaking of this, I just posted yesterday on Propaganda Report Daily that this Gerasimov, what was his name again? The general, they call it the Gerasimov Doctrine. He is a Russian general who wrote in 2013 that pretty soon their battlefields would just be full of robots running, jumping, whatever, and that they would even be able to make their own plants. So if that's, that's not the first thing I want The first android I want is a soldier capable of deciding what to do.
Yeah, I guess people will be faced with a choice about what type of android they get, functionality wise. It reminds me of that game, Marry, Sex, or, Kill. Have you ever heard of that game?
I don't know that game.
It's a game where people, they decide if they want to, they pick a person in the room, and then they decide if they would rather marry that person, only sleep with that person, or kill that person. And with the androids, I guess it would be like marry, sex, or garden.
So you obviously are not a mom, or garden would be replaced with clean. Obviously, cleaning is the thing. It's not like I have a clean house. It's just never ends. So yes, I think I would fully give a woman's work is never done. I will fully give over to the entire android culture if it can help me clean.
That's how you're going to get locked into the grid.
Yes. No, that's how they do it. They find the one thing. It's like Einstein. Einstein had these two immutable political philosophies. He absolutely did not believe there should be nation states. He thought there should only be a world government, and he absolutely thought he was a pacifist. So even if you were a soldier in the war, you should sooner lay down your gun and get shot than fight in World War I. And in both cases, those are his two immutable rules. In both cases, he violated them for his own, what he perceived to be his own self-interest. World War II, because it was against the Nazis, and he was Jewish and German, or was he Austrian? He was German. And the state, establishing the state of Israel as a nation, because he had lost his passport under the Nazis, so he had no nation. I mean, it's understandable, but I'm just saying, like, if they get you where you live, you'll violate your rules. So one of my predictions...
It's that main point of focus that they put in the front of your mind, and you don't see the other stuff.
What do you mean?
Like, if I'm focusing so hard on how much easier it is to clean my house because of this android, and it satisfies that deep need that I had, and it feels so good, I'm completely oblivious, not even thinking about all the data that it's collecting while it's doing it.
Yeah. That's why you really don't want to be led into temptation, because it's like impossible to resist. But I feel like that's what is happening with people, traditional conservatives, whatever, Republican voters, that it's the Republicans that offer them these things that violate their fundamental rules, like what I was talking before, the upsourcing versus subsidiarity. When it's something that appeals to them, like the plastic bag ban or the bathroom gender laws or the Defense of Marriage Act, they're willing to violate the 10th Amendment, states' rights, which are absolutely critical. That's the thing that the left should be learning from the Trump election. The 10th Amendment is absolutely critical, but they'll be led down the garden path because they're like, well, this is too important. It's like Kissinger said about the Chilean election, too important for the people to decide.
Yeah, it's the selection of emotional appeals or base biological appeals to the specific group of people they need to influence. Anybody who wants to read Edward Bernays' book, Crystallizing Public Opinion, he talks a lot about selecting different types of appeals for different groups as a way to get them to take the action you want them to take. He has like a whole chapter on it, which is fantastic. The book's, again, it's Crystallizing Public Opinion by Edward Bernays.
Awesome. Well, I'll do some show notes and we can link all that stuff.
Okay, cool. So, I have two more of these.
Go.
One of them is, I believe that how to police the virtual reality world is going to become a prominent part of the conversation in 2017, and I think it will be a result of some sort of controversial sex assault that happens within the virtual reality world. So subjectively and psychologically, someone's going to say they got sexually assaulted, and that's going to thrust how to police the virtual reality world into the conversation.
That sounds right. There's always an initiating event. There's always a false flag. There's always going to be an event.
And they've been seeding these this year. They've had like some subtle ones throughout 2016. There's going to be a little bit more of a dramatic one in 2017.
And it doesn't always have to be exactly on point. Like you were saying how the Amazon Alexa or Echo or whatever ordered something it heard from the TV and sent it to the kid's house, which is a story I don't necessarily buy because I was doing voice to text earlier.
It was like a
phone.
lingerie or something. Yeah, I think it was like mailed to the kid.
My phone would not voice to text the show I was listening to on the radio. I was listening to Stuart Varney on Fox Business, and I was trying to voice to text a text, and it only picked up the sound of my voice. Even after I let it listen to the radio and stuff, it would not articulate those words. So I feel like that's probably not a real story, but those are the kind of stories. I mean, it's a real story, but I think it's a story. But those kind of stories, maybe I could be wrong. It's a different device. I really don't know. But
you know how
it doesn't matter.
Like, our phone will type something like really odd or strange because it predicts the wrong word. Maybe there's some sort of predicting going on.
Yeah, maybe. But I just feel like it doesn't register like digital voices. But in any case, it doesn't even have to be spot on. Like it can be an Echo thing or an Alexa thing, and they'll still use it for virtual reality, just have a comprehensive approach, a big law in the entire, like this cybersecurity omnibus law, which is coming.
You know what I think they're going to do with virtual reality is the virtual reality world is, it's a new frontier. It's the Wild West. And those are like, that's where propaganda wars happen. People who want to take control of those environments. But the whole idea behind virtual reality is total immersion, to try to continue to improve the experience to make it as similar to reality as possible. And what's going to happen is there's going to be crime within the virtual reality world, but the crime is going to be determined by the subjective feeling of the victim. So the victim's going to say that someone did whatever, and they're going to evaluate it. And I believe they're going to develop a way to measure it by like evaluating the brain waves. And so they can say if they were psychologically affected in a certain way that it created, I don't know, post-traumatic stress syndrome or something, then a crime was committed. And then because virtual reality is going to be so similar to reality, they're then going to transfer that subjective standard of proof to the real world. So we will now be at the mercy of anyone who says that we committed a crime against them. In the virtual reality world.
Okay, so one of my things is pre-crime. No, I got it. And I've got a word for it. Psychological crime.
Yeah.
So I've got pre-crime, and psychological crime that's very good. I might have to, maybe you should write me a little paragraph and I'll put it in my glossary. So we have just the right word. Yes. Submit. Right. Give me a submission. I'll evaluate it. No, I was thinking one of my things to look out for is pre-crime, continuing use of criminal profiling, of using social media. But psychological crime would also fold into Melania's, which I did predict this, Melania's cause celeb is going to be cyberbullying. So psychological crime can fold into that too.
Yeah, exactly. And their total information control, I believe we're both in agreement on, is that they're going after that in 2017.
Yes, and it's going to be everything.
Really.
Yeah, surveillance, which is pretty much put into place under Obama. Next is going to be censorship and propaganda. So they're going to censor any kind of independent news and replace it with fabricated or proved propaganda.
Really confusing. I mean, it's going to continue to be really confusing, I believe. The whole fake news versus real news, the confusion and bewilderment is going to just get more intense in 2017 just to keep people so like just overwhelmed.
I get overwhelmed, and I feel like I really throw myself into it. I've been doing it for a while. I'm clear thinking, and people send me this Pizzagate stuff. They really are desperate for me to dig into it, and I understand it. I just can't. I mean, I really can't. What will be the point of spending our valuable time, not mine or yours, whatever, but just like everybody's time. It directly takes time away from, say, seeing what laws they're passing today.
Yeah. I mean, we know there's pedophile rings. And from my point of view, that's what's most important. But getting caught up in the details, you're right. We miss
and
other
it's
things
been exposed. They're not gonna, maybe if people got really crazy about it, it would force a real investigation. That is possible. Maybe I shouldn't.
I mean, what I looked into, I think Podesta is definitely involved in some pretty bad stuff personally. But you're right. Getting caught up in the details, it can take you down that rabbit hole and just drive you mad. I had a reaction yesterday that I wanted to tell you about. I've gotten I distrust what I see in the news. Always, I distrust it.
Yeah.
And there's been so many stories that have been reported as fake hoax crimes, like a really long list of them, a growing list of them, where now it's like yesterday, this thing happened on Facebook, and I didn't before my initial reaction before I watched the video, which I haven't watched the entire video yet, before I read anything about it, just when I heard about it in passing, my initial reaction was, whoa, that seems... I was hesitant to jump all over that as see how, it's a hate crime against on the other side,
You're
because
saying it was the thing where it's like, I think 4 black kids beat up in like Facebook Live,
right?
That's white handicapped kid.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wouldn't even look at
left,
that because it was so obviously a manipulation. It might be true, but it's being used by the media to promote an agenda, and I just keep walking, which makes it kind of hard to keep up on the news because there's so much of that.
Here's the parallel that I thought about instantly. There is, take that church that burned down, for instance, the one in Mississippi where Vote Trump was painted on the side of it, and the
black
reaction
church, right?
of people, the black church, the reaction of the confirmation bias reaction of people who want to believe that all Trump supporters are racist instantly they believed that. They didn't ask any questions and they ran with it because it satisfied their need to believe that, right? And now on the other side here, I'm not saying the story's not true, even if the story is true.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't
even if
matter.
Right. When you hear a story like this on the other side, the reaction is the same thing. It's you want to believe, it's the confirmation bias. I told you, I knew it, and you run with it. And that was my instant reaction was, whoa, this seems like it's a setup. It seems like they're trying, because there's been so many proven hoaxes on the left, it seems like they're trying to set people up on the right to fall victim to the same confirmation bias, and then
like the hacking
it turns out to be a hoax.
Like the Russian hacking of the Vermont, like the power grid hacking that Washington Post reported.
It seemed like bait to
hoax.
me. It seemed like they were throwing in bait. Now the story might be true. Like I said, I'm not. This seems like a pretty intense story.
Right. So then there's there's like another.
It's
that's
hard
the
to question.
truth question, right? Is it a real story that they? I mean, it's my opinion that a story like that, where there are 320 million people in this country, kids get beat up all the time, and everybody has a phone. If you were looking for some stories over others, and you had a fairly, not even that long a timeline, you could probably get this story or something that works close enough, throw it up there. Maybe it doesn't stick. Maybe it does. If it doesn't stick, it'll prompt, copycats that will stick.
And that's what I told my friend.
It could be real and just serve an agenda, or it could be fake because that's the agenda it needs to serve.
Right. What I told my friend was, at some point in time, there's going to be a live stream hate crime hoax. There'll be a live stream hate crime hoax, and it will be intense. I'm not saying it's this, but I'm saying there will be one, and people will automatically believe it.
So real people have to get hurt from fake news.
Exactly.
That's what I predict. Real people, fake news.
And the hoax they'll perpetrate a hoax through live stream. It will be intense, and people will jump all over it. They'll run with it. Maybe some sort of riots will happen, and then it will later be exposed to be a hoax. And it'll be a total setup. They're setting both sides up to run with fake stories, and then they're being proven to be hoaxes just to keep the other sides bewildered, because you don't even realize it's a hoax when you want it to be true, like I said earlier. But it's just a constantly messing with people psychologically.
Yeah, because I don't care if it's true or not, but that's what the question is, right? So now I have to care again.
Exactly.
I've already given up on truth porn because I don't care. And now it's like, but whether it's true or not is the real story. And I could look into it, but I'm not, because I don't care.
Right.
I really am so
with what I was just saying there.
Yeah, I totally get it. I get it. They're setting people up, and I think it does dovetail. I think it'll probably satisfy both of our predictions that there is going to be real people are going to get hurt because of fake news. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
Vern Jordan telegraphed it.
For me and for people listening and anybody is like, we are all so vulnerable to confirmation bias that we're going to get baited, because that's the easiest way to manipulate a group of people, is to exploit their confirmation bias, is to throw them bait, to throw them an appeal that they're going to jump all over because it satisfies something that they've already decided that they believe. And when that's the case, we are so open and so vulnerable to being manipulated that we have to be careful with what we run with. I think that's the bigger point that I'm getting at.
Because of our two pieces of our history, one, as Americans, one is that critical thinking has definitely, as far as like recognizing fallacious arguments and recognizing when you're being influenced or manipulated, that's been completely excised from our educational system process. And we also have a history of believing our news. We don't have a history of what we recognize to be state-owned news agencies. So we're just super vulnerable to not questioning stuff that comes out of the glowing box. And we're incapable of questioning anything now because that questioning is gone. Although not from the elite schools, as John Taylor Gatto will tell us. If you want to go to my website,
we should do a show on that.
Show notes
on how different those schools are, because it's really interesting.
Yeah, he says it leaves out it. Everybody has grammar, which is like memorizing stuff, and they have logic, which is thinking things through, but they leave out the followers, the people, the masses don't get rhetoric anymore, but the elites get rhetoric. So they not only can influence you, they are aware of attempts to influence them. They don't fall for
and it's
it.
also the teaching style. It's open discussion. It's holding alternative possibilities in mind at once. It's not coming to instant conclusions. It's deliberating with people who disagree with you from like third grade. It's a type of teaching style where it's not like moat or rote, A, B, C, D. We're going to have an open debate and conversation. We're going to consider alternative possibilities, which teaches them to be flexible in the way they think and in the way they act, while the general population is conditioned to be rigid in the way they act.
Well, I don't know if you can generalize about all the elite schools.
Everybody.
Yeah, because I went to a couple of schools for my son, who's interested in like some private middle schools. And for me, I feel like, why pay all that money just to get your kid brainwashed and indoctrinated? And the political messages about the environment and atheism were so powerful, just sitting in like the presentations for the open house. And I don't require, my kids go to a Catholic school, but I don't require any kind of brainwashing for religion or anything. Like, I feel like it's absolutely, it's the most interesting thing we can do in our entire lives is to contemplate not the true nature of power on earth, but the true nature of power in the universe. If there is power, where we came from, the fifth dimension. I wish we didn't have to worry about this stuff, because the reason I worry about it is because we're going to almost lose that ability to think. But I feel like thinking about that stuff is so interesting. So I'm sitting there in this class, and the guy is just so happy that his kids, laugh at the idea of religion and feel strongly about legislating for the environment. And it did not feel to me like people who were some of the schools did. But this was a very expensive school, and I felt like, wow, they are really trying to brainwash these kids.
Indoctrinate them. I mean, atheism is a religion. People are just as intense about it.
Right, because the only really sure position is agnosticism. You have to question. You don't know. You can't know. I mean, I actually went back and was looking at like 2,000 years ago, like how far has our inquiry into the existence and nature of God really come? And the impression I was getting is like, you can still ask the same questions the Greeks were asking. And that's interesting to me. I mean, I know people get like all worked up about religion. It's interesting. And I want that. And I feel like if you are so certain the truth is what you know it to be, then let your kid just teach your kids how to think and be honest, and they will arrive at your same truth. If you're so sure that your objective truth is correct, your little sect or whatever it is absolutely dead on accurate, then your kids, if you really teach them how to think, they will arrive at that conclusion. So it's almost a faith in truth that will get you to kind of ease up on that and want your kids to think. But I do not get the impression. And actually, John Taylor Gatto said that he has a great 5-hour show that I'm going to put in the show notes. Not show, but interview. He said it's not all the elite schools. It's not every prep school, every expensive school. It's basically like the 4 big schools in D.C., a couple in New York, that kind of thing. Like a very, very select group where basically all the kids of senators go. Yeah, like Obama's kids go to one of those schools. Anything else?
Two more from me. 2 real quick ones. I'm going to predict that the Falcons are going to lose to the Patriots 27-24 in the Super Bowl.
You got money on that?
No, I don't know. But what money? I stopped gambling when I was like 12 years old after I won a college football bowl poll. I won like $300. That was it for me.
And you knew that it was you were ahead.
I had peaked in my gambling career. I didn't need to continue gambling. My final one is I believe we're going to see the first, in 2017, we're going to see the world's first human head transplant.
Whoa. That is so freaky.
They've been talking about it for I've been following this for like 3 years, and I think it's going to happen this year.
I mean, the Dr. Strangelove kind of ramifications of that. Could you imagine if David Rockefeller could get another body?
It's with his face, like a 25-year-old.
He's 100. He just turned 100. Yeah, I know. You're going to want to tighten that up. But while you're at it, I'm just saying, if your brain is working okay. Interesting. Very interesting. We're getting on here. So if you want, so we're doing this WSB show Saturday, which is tomorrow for us. We're recording it the day before, but I will post the WSB podcast probably as episode 21 of the Propaganda Report. And it's going to have my 10 predictions or whatever, insights, expectations for 2017. So what I can give you now, only because we ran out of time, I'm not trying to tease anybody, but people who listen to the show probably know because we're always talking about what to watch out for. But I have a few quick hits of I just want to rapid fire tell you the kind of keywords that I think are what to watch out for. You ready?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. I think the agenda words are going to be cronyism and control. I think every single thing that you get out of Trump or what's to come, you could write next to it, is this an act of cronyism or is this an attempt at control? Every single thing, which I guess translates into power and money, which are the old the staples of influence. Okay, but here are my
cronyism and control. All right, I got it. I got it in the books. Control.
So those are the agenda items. When we play what's the agenda, it's always going to be one of those 2 things. It's like true or false, cronyism or control. You can be able to do every single one. Okay, so here are the words. Power grid. So I think we're going to get an attack on the power grid. I think it's going to call for security and spending on the power grid. So that's going to be a big attack this year. Trucking. Right. Trucking. People are not tuned into trucking, but boy, is it in the crosshairs. It's on the forefront of total vehicle control. They really control those guys. They have surveillance devices on them. They control their hours. They're developing a driverless truck retrofit.
They tested one across the country already.
A retrofit or a new one?
They tested like a driverless truck, like a beer delivery. They tested one across the country.
I didn't know that, but what's interesting to me is why would you retrofit it unless you're going to roll it out fast and soon? Otherwise, you would just wait. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you're taking the existing fleet of trucks, I mean, my brother's a trucker. I come from a long line of truckers. They put 100,000 miles on their truck every year. You could just wait for those things to dry up and fall off, but they're going to, anyway. So law firms, as I said, there have been articles written recently about them being subject to hacking that can lead to criminal activity, insider trading. Your private stuff is super vulnerable. The confidentiality is a way for crimes to happen. So watch for law firms to get limitations on their confidentiality or be subject to anti-encryption or whatever. Bathrooms, you're going to lose your privacy in bathrooms, I'm telling you. Secret Service, I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop on the Secret Service fail. And Trump added a wrinkle to that because he has his own guards. He replaces the Secret Service and is using his own guards, apparently. So that seems to be foreshadowing of something bad. Also, we never got his medical stuff. I have a feeling, I mean, I would be very surprised if he doesn't have heart issues. I don't know why I feel that, but I just do.
He seems like he has that red, like high blood pressure.
Yeah, something seems a little bit off. I don't know. Airports, they're going to throw money at the infrastructure of airports. Prisons, they're going to throw money at prison infrastructure. Maybe we'll get another jailbreak. Rehab centers, big money at the rehab centers. That opioid addiction is going to continue to dominate the news, and there'll be a lot of stories around that, maybe big stuff that maybe it'll be a veteran-related thing. I just read something that struck me. Grassroots terrorist attacks are going to be the big thing in 2017. Last year, 2016 was lone wolves. This year, it's going to be grassroots, so homegrown terrorists. Al-Qaeda is going to make a comeback. They're going to consolidate the intelligence agencies, put them under strict control, under like one guy, so that there's no outside power, no leaking of information. You can call it insider threat 2.0. I think we're going to have a crackdown or a consolidation on that. And then the last thing is the war on cash will continue.
The war on cash? Oh, okay.
Yes.
So is that like Bitcoin? Cash. Is that what Bitcoin is, the cashless?
If people wonder why I don't defend Bitcoin, I really don't know much about it. But the fact that it's allowed to exist, they would shut it down if it was a real threat to the monetary system of the world. My guess is it's a way to make the cashless society feel like a, Uber thing, feel like a gig event, a grassroots event, whereas Uber is like the biggest money loser of all time. Like that is a company that is highly subsidized for, I think, in anticipation of a major shift in how things work. So you have to kind of have some good intel before you're going to do that.
Uber has grown so quickly.
Yeah, because they subsidize their drivers. Yeah, it's a money-losing operation. It is a value. It is cheaper than your own car. It's a money-losing operation because I think it doesn't work when you have drivers in it. You have to replace it with driverless, and they know that that's going to happen. And the politicians are in on it, or they wouldn't have let it push out the taxis in these old cities like San Francisco and New York, where you could those lobbies, those taxi cartels were just had an iron fist on local government, and they just lost it for Uber. Anyway, I've written a lot about that. I know it seems like a small matter, but
I think the Uber stuff is interesting. It's like really expanding into a lot of other areas as well. It's not, it's going to go beyond just cars.
For a long time, I anticipated that the delivering food or delivering packages would be the first use of driverless technology, driverless Ubers, because people don't have to get in it.
Yeah.
You can just, if you see them enough and you experience them enough before you actually get in it. Also, maybe you'll get another like Uber driver kill somebody.
That's what I think. I think that's going to happen, in 2017. There's going to be a bad Uber accident.
Yeah, we shall see. All right, well, those are my quick hits, but my elaborate, big picture concepts we do not have time for, which is fine.
All right, you're going to do them on tomorrow, I guess, right?
Yeah, so this is episode 20 of the Propaganda Report. We are wrapping this up, and in episode 21, I will give you my long-form 10 expectations for 2017.
And that wraps up our 20th episode of the Propaganda Report. We made it. We made it this far.
Too bad we couldn't get it in under the wire in 2016, but it is our first show. Is it not?
That's
2017?
Right. Yeah, sure is.
Excellent. All right, my dear. Until next time.
We will see y'all later.